All right, at 6 o'clock, I am going to call the Norton School Committee meeting on Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, to order. First up is Pledge of Allegiance. Flag flying.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is being recorded by the Norton Media. If anyone else is recording, please just let us know. Any little echo.
I think she's...
Check. Check. Yeah, much better. Okay. First up on the agenda is the public comment period. Is there anyone in the audience who is here to make a comment? Come on up. If you can, anyone who's speaking, if you can just give your name and address, just so we have it on record. Yes.
My name is Alexis Klinger. My address is 16 Daniel Drive in Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
For the record, you're a staff member, sorry.
I am a staff member, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Alexis, make sure you're speaking directly into the
Okay,
microphone.
thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the members of the school committee. It is a privilege to be here today to share my thoughts with you. My name is Alexis Klinger, and I am currently a third grade general education teacher at the LGN. I have been teaching for 9 years, 4 of them here in Norton, and have had the privilege of working with a diverse range of students. I have completed my Bachelor's of Science in Education, have completed my Master's degree in Moderate Disabilities in Curriculum and Instruction, and continue to educate myself through graduate level courses. I want it to be known how grateful I am for the unwavering support I have received from staff, administration, and the community here. After navigating some challenges in my career, I truly feel like I've found a second home in Norton. The camaraderie among my colleagues, the trust from the administration, and the shared dedication to our students have made me feel incredibly supported over the past couple of years. After experiencing some transitions in my teaching career and teaching in multiple districts, finding a place like our Norton district has been a breath of fresh air. It has been a place where I have felt valued and have found real passion for being part of a team committed to making a difference to the lives of our students. This district has not come without change and sacrifice too. Due to the major budget cuts our district has faced, I have had to make significant personal sacrifices to help maintain my colleagues and my own position. In order to support the staffing structure and prevent further reductions, I transitioned from teaching kindergarten for the past 5 years to teaching 3rd grade this year. This shift, while challenging and outside my initial focus, was necessary to ensure that our school could keep valuable positions intact. Despite the difficulty of this change, I made the decision because I value my colleagues and recognize the critical need for strong, dedicated educators who can meet the diverse needs of our students. The continuity and quality of our teaching staff is essential for providing students with the education they deserve, and I wanted to do everything I could to protect that. Despite these sacrifices, the effort to ensure our school community remains strong, I'm now faced with the difficult reality. While the environment here has been nothing short of a blessing, I am at a point where I'm struggling to reconcile my deep commitment to this school and my personal financial reality. Despite the support, the solidarity, and the joy I find in teaching here, the compensation simply does not allow me to sustain myself long term. It is incredibly difficult for me to even consider leaving, but the truth is, if the financial aspect doesn't change, I'm not sure how I can continue to give everything I have to my students, my colleagues, and this district. This isn't just about me. I'm speaking on behalf of many young educators who are facing the same dilemma right here in our town. We are passionate, we are committed, but we are also trying to make a living in an increasingly challenging financial environment. It feels heartbreaking to be in a place I love, only to face the painful reality that I might not be able to stay because of financial constraints. If we want to keep the next generation of educators here, we need to address this issue together. The loss of teachers and essential support staff, like interventionists and specialists, has had a huge impact on our students. These aren't just jobs, they're lifelines for kids who struggle academically or need extra help with personal challenges. Excuse me. Every time we lose someone in one of these roles, more students are left without the support they need. The absence of interventionists, in particular, has created a major gap in the help that vulnerable students rely on. Without these resources, our ability to offer a personalized education has taken a serious hit. Students who once had a chance to succeed are now slipping through the cracks. And the emotional strain this is putting on them and their families is hard to ignore. Losing these key positions isn't just a setback, it's an injustice to the kids who need us most. And I fear this will continue happening unless we do something about it now. I stand before you because I believe in this district, its mission, and most importantly, the potential of every student we serve. I hope we can find a solution that ensures not just the survival of our school, but its ability to continue thriving and providing the high-quality educations that our students deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration and for supporting the work that we all do here. I'm looking forward to working together to find a way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else for public comment?
Good evening. My name is Danielle Sala. My address is 34 Cornell Avenue in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Good evening. My name is Danielle Sala, and I am an art teacher. My journey at Norton Public Schools began in January of 2017, where I completed student teaching at the high school. Since then, I have had various roles in our district, including a part-time art teacher position, a long-term art substitute at the high school for 2 full years. I was a paraprofessional in the LBC program at our high school, and I'm currently in my 4th year at the JCS as a part-time art teacher, bringing me in my 8th year working with Norton Public Schools, where my journey began. When I started my journey here, I remember being excited and thankful to be in a district that had so many art and music offerings at the high school level. It was beautiful to see students be able to explore their unique interests, tell their stories, and grow as people. Now, after years in our district, I'm afraid of the ripple effects of the budget crisis for the arts here in Norton. Last year, art and music were cut from the middle school. Without giving students exposure to the arts in those grades, I'm afraid for what that means at the high school level and beyond in our district as a whole moving forward. Once students enter grade 9, they may not know if the arts are a subject they are interested in, leading to a decreasing numbers in those programs and them being seen as obsolete. Through exposure to the arts, students learn crucial problem-solving skills, they develop empathy for others, and gain a better understanding of perseverance. The arts teach students to be resilient in the face of struggles, which offer them confidence by giving them an opportunity to succeed, no matter what that looks like. Throughout the years of teaching here, I've seen students use art as a creative outlet, persevere, and achieve things they thought they never could do, and tell their story. My hope for Norton's future is that we can provide a learning experience where all students can continue to persevere, learn, grow, and succeed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Amy Weber. My address is 451 South Main Street, Mansfield. I'm the president of the Norton Teachers Association, and I just want to thank the 2 teachers who came and shared their stories with us tonight. Over the next few weeks, we're hoping to have more educators come and share what they love about Norton and what they find challenging in Norton. And you can see there's many of us here tonight. And what we're asking is to the school committee is we want to work with you to advocate for the schools and to really work to advocate to the town to make sure that we get the funding that our schools deserve. And we're asking you tonight if you will commit with us to work together as we move forward with negotiations.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, I think speaking on behalf of the school committee, that's always been our goal.
Yep.
We don't have schools without teachers, so that's of course exactly what we want as well. So yes, we will
Perfect.
do everything we possibly can.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the agenda. Next up is vote to approve the minutes of February 5th open session meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review?
Yep.
I will entertain a motion. So,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, Mrs. Cohen for warrants.
I've reviewed and approved the following warrants: school expense warrants, February 5th, 2025, $396,745.99. February 19th, 2025, $634,285.39. School payroll warrants, February 6th, 2025, $1,167,482.78. February 20th, 2025, $1,215,771.81. I wish to enter that into public record.
Thank you very much. Next up, student rep update.
Good afternoon, everybody. So from the Hay, from Mr. Gagan, one of the best times of the year is almost here with our Hay PTO Spring Scholastic Book Fair, which begins the week during parent-teacher conferences. Students come down as a class to the fair and can go during the conferences to pick out books. This is one of the best ways for us to keep our PTO book vending machine filled with choices for the kids. Each book sold at the fair earns us Scholastic dollars, which we then can use to purchase new books to refill the machine. When we need it, we average 30 books per week earned by students for PBIS hashtags and good news calls of the day. And we hope to see as many parents as we can during parent-teacher conferences coming up in a few weeks on March 19th and 20th.
And then from the LG, the PTC sponsored one of the best enrichment opportunities today, Whale Mobile. Each class of students received a 40-minute learning experience and even got to spend time inside of a life-size inflatable whale. Every student and teacher raved about how awesome it was. We are lucky to have such a supportive parent group who looked for a new and interesting way to enrich learning here at LGN.
And from the JCS, our students are looking forward to Read Across America Week during the first week of March. Each day of the week, the teachers have different themes and activities planned to make reading extra fun and engaging. Some of the activities are dress up as your favorite book character, flashlight reading, and other days read something you have written to someone at school. So lots of cool things coming up at Norton High School as well. On Tuesday, March 4th, members of the English Honor Society will be participating and traveling to elementary schools to participate in Read Across America. So we will have some of our high school students make the trip to the 3 elementary schools. Next week on March 5th, we have the STEAM Showcase where students and community members present their science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics accomplishments with some other interactive exhibits. And the music department is sponsoring a night of music, food, and fun at the high school on Friday, March 7th called the Night Club, and that is Night with a K. And the week after, on March 12th, is the annual Mr. NHS competition for the senior class. That's all from us. Thank you.
Just kidding, I have one more. I forgot to add it. And then from NMS, the boys and girls basketball teams closed out their season prior to February vacation. Both teams enjoyed successful seasons, with the girls finishing at .500 for the season at 8-8, while the boys enjoyed their successful season in many years, finishing with the best record in the league and an overall record of 16-2. Congratulations to both teams and the coaches. Our unified basketball team began their slate of games today and traveled to Berkeley. Our unified basketball team hosts their first home game next week on Wednesday, March 5th. Our amazing SRO, Officer Robichaud, have recently begun working with our students once again on the Project Alert curriculum. Project Alert serves to give students the background and education they need as it relates to making good choices and dangers of substance abuse. Students very much enjoy working with Officer Robichaud in the programs. Is the highlight of every day for many students. And lastly, the 7th grade math and social studies teachers recently completed their cross-curricular unit known as the Polynesian Travel Journal and Expenses Project. Students were tasked with creating an itinerary for a fictional trip to the South Pacific, utilizing their math skills and their understanding and knowledge of the South Pacific history from their recently completed unit on Polynesia. The award-winning project was recognized by the New England League of Middle Schools, NELMS, and for its creativity at last year's annual conference. That's all we have for you tonight.
Perfect, thank you very much. Timmy, we expect better than 500 next year. Next up is Student Spotlight with Mr. Goldstein.
Good evening, everybody. Great to be back here. As you know, for many years now, I've come to you around this time of year to share with all of you the ambassador for Project 351 for the current year. And so I'm going to allow her to introduce herself very shortly. Just so everybody knows, this year was the 15th year for Project 351, so a milestone year. And Project 351, obviously something that's very near and dear to my heart, and we have lots of connections within the district. In fact, the person taking pictures of me right now is a former ambassador and sits here with you for every meeting. And so I'm going to allow the wonderful individual to my right to do some talking now and let you tell her about the awesome day that she had. So.
Hi, my name is Sam McGarry. I'm so excited to be chosen as a Project 351 ambassador this year, and I'm looking forward to the year of service ahead. So at our lunch day in January, all 351 new ambassadors met at the JFK Memorial Library in Boston. Here we had the opportunity to hear Governor Healy and the Secretary of Education speak on leadership and service. We then broke apart into 3 service site locations. I was in the clothing drive group where we went to Curls to Crayons. Here we sorted clothes for children in need before heading back to the library. The whole day was such a great experience, and seeing what a big impact we made in such a short time was so inspiring. This was Project 351's 15th year, and their goal was to impact 15,000 lives in Massachusetts this year. An exciting part of being an ambassador is the chance to serve here in our hometown community, which is why I'm looking forward to leading a Norton Public Schools clothing drive this spring. I'm so grateful to Mr. Goldstein and the Norton Middle School for this amazing opportunity. Thank you.
So for everyone here, I included the 2024 impact report from Project 351 for the school committee. And it's amazing to see over the 15 years how many service opportunities have been provided to our students. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Hannah for her hard work. And I know that she's going to do an incredible job making us proud with her service this year. And I have a little certificate for her as well. Congratulations, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Any questions, comments? All good?
Nice work. You make us proud.
Sorry.
Great work.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks to the McGarry family for coming and joining her tonight, too.
Next up on the agenda is our presentation and vote on the 2027 Global Education Trip to Barcelona and Peru. This is Mrs. Bray and Mrs. Burdett.
Hi, I'm Kim B.
And I'm Kim B. We're here to propose trips, international trips through EF Travel for the school year 2027. The first trip would be during February vacation, which Kim will talk about in a second. The second trip would be during April vacation. We'd like to propose a trip to Barcelona and Paris. This trip would support our curriculum because that supports the 2 languages that we offer. It would give kids the opportunity to speak in their languages, to see some cultural, learn about the culture of the languages that they're learning. The trip would run from the beginning to the end of vacation, approximately 8 days. Exact travel dates would be determined. They would spend 3 days each in Barcelona and Paris with travel time in between. And the cost is approximately $4,400, which is in line with what the other trips have cost over the years. We're going to Greece this year. We were Ireland next year. So we have traveled with EF a few times before and have had some very positive experiences. Yeah.
So for the service side, we like to do, a language and tourism tour, and then for this next service trip. So we just had last April, we had a very successful trip to Thailand. And then, so for 2027, we are looking at a trip to Peru, which was previously approved and was scheduled to go, and then unfortunately had to get canceled because of COVID. So we're going to try again. We did survey the student body, and Peru was the top choice in terms of location. So I believe it was Dominican, Thailand, Peru, maybe one other, but we did survey the student body and Peru was the top choice, so we're going to move forward with that. This is a 9-day trip. There's a sample itinerary in there, and it would include 2 days of working with a local nonprofit and the local community members, and this would take place over February vacation in 2027. And the good thing is this total tour cost is $4,659. Typically the service trips tend to be a little bit pricier, so we're excited that for 2027 it's a comparable price with Barcelona and Paris, so that was something that we wanted to look at. And so those are our hopefully next 2 upcoming global trips by Kimby's.
We're just going to call them Kimby trips from now on. Just going to rename them. I've been through a number of these. I've sent my child on several of these, and some to be determined, so she will be upset that she doesn't get to go on these ones because she'll be alumni at that point. But I think these are such great experiences for kids in the district. I traveled as a teenager as well. EF is a really good partner. They do try and keep the cost down as much as possible, the auto debit and things like that. So for me, I always like to see these trips. I know they get pretty popular, so I think it's great that you guys have this interest. It's above and beyond for the kids, so I think they do appreciate it that you guys take your time out on your vacations to bring them. So that being said, it's another great experience, and it's good that we found EF as a good travel partner. So.
I also think it's important for everyone to know, because I know not everyone has approved these trips in the past. We do work consistently with EF as our travel partner for a number of different reasons. Number one, they have great opportunities and experiences for our students, but also it really comes down to the safety and the protection that are provided to students while we travel. They have 24/7 access wherever you are around the globe to people that work directly for EF that are in the country where you are if there's an emergency. We had a situation last year where a student lost their passport on the way to the airport. EF was incredible in working with us to make sure that our student and our chaperone that had to stay behind were, number one, taken care of, number two, help them work with the embassy really quickly to get an additional passport, and then also help them transition all of their travel plans for the way home. EF can be a little bit more expensive than some other global travel companies, but I think it really does come with that peace of mind, not just for the people who are traveling and taking the trip and also sending their own children, but for us as a school district as well. So I would ask you guys to support these moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of those things, when it comes to these tours, like you look at the price tag and you get taken aback, but if you're going to pay less, you're going to get less. That's especially this type of industry. So I mean, it's good that we have an industry partner that is a worldwide leader. So.
Anything else? I would just like to make sure everyone is aware this is completely funded by the students. There's no town funding to these projects. Or trips, rather. With that being said, I will request a motion to approve global educational trips to Barcelona and Peru in 2027 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you. Have a great time, guys.
Thank you.
Sure will.
And how many days until Greece?
51. If you're counting.
But who's counting?
I'm counting.
I'm also counting. Yes, I am. Every other year I try to do one. It's so much fun. It's a great way to get to know the kids too. So I'm really excited and looking forward to it.
I'm going to take a good 10-second break just to let everyone get out of here. All right, continuing on. Next up is our first reading for a graduation requirement policy revision. Dr. Dolan.
Thank you very much. I think this is going to advance. There we go. So really, this is just some recommendations from me and from our Norton High School Site Council, as well as our academic coordinator group, who also sort of took a look at this and some other districts. administrators on sort of how to adapt our graduation requirements to the ballot initiative that passed on November 6th. So just to remind everyone what that said is that in the past, or at least since 2003, MCAS has been used to determine whether or not a student met basic competencies by getting a appropriate score on English, math, and then science. And that is no longer the case in Massachusetts. As of December 5th, actually, is when the law took effect. But what it states now is to satisfactorily complete coursework that kind of meets those standards and curriculum frameworks that were part of MCAS. So basically, students no longer need to pass MCAS in order to graduate. So what that means, we got some guidance on December 11th from actually two sets of guidance, one on the 7th of November, then again on the 11th of December from DESC on what that means. Basically, we as a district can no longer rely on an MCAS score in order to determine whether or not a student is competent. We need to determine what our guidelines would be for that competency. And then also in January, we have the promise of more guidance. Eventually, there's going to be a group coming together that's going to look at sort of systematic changes to competency determination across the state or recommendations from ESC. And so that puts us in kind of an interesting limbo. So we looked at all of these factors and also considered the fact that there's going to be additional guidance, definitely checking around area districts. There's kind of two ways districts have approached this. They've taken the opportunity to kind of do a whole systematic review of their graduation requirements, and then others have kind of put in a stopgap measure for the class of 2025 and 2026 in anticipation that we'll have more guidance and more requirements in the future. And that's kind of where we landed as well, is to have a very light touch with this as far as what our policy is, in order to kind of wait and see what that guidance would be, so that we're not kind of reinventing the wheel twice when it comes out in the future. And so what the recommendation is, and as I stated in that memo, I looked through, I didn't read every school committee policy looking for it, but I did do a bunch of searches where I could determine as far as competency determination for Norton. What it had said is just also required to pass the state assessment tests, and that comes in with other requirements that are stated for Norton High School in the Norton High School handbook. And what I suggest was to strike that and just to put in place the competency determination, and that's the language directly from the ballot question, would be to pass English 1 and 2, Algebra 1 and Geometry, Biology, Introductory Physics, Physics, or Chemistry. So those are the areas that were covered by the MCAS in 2023. It seems like the wisest course to kind of adhere as closely as possible to that law, just to, again, make sure that we're fulfilling those requirements. Really, this changes nothing. These courses were required of our students anyway. You have to pass 4 years of English, 4 years of math that include these. There's no way within the course structure not to take these courses. Students have to pass 3 years of science as well, and all of these classes, particularly biology and introductory physics, would be 9th grade courses. That is the only one where students can move on to another science. They still have to pass 3 courses, so they're going to pass one that would qualify for that competency determination. Just for some context, this would only affect one student this year who has not yet earned the competency determination by traditional means, so either through an original administration of the MCAS or a subsequent retest. All of our students pretty much have already achieved their competency determination. 2026, pretty similar, although there's a little bit larger group there because we won't be offering the retest to them down the road here as well. Over the course of the last 6 years, I can kind of speak to intelligently since I've been here, that would only affected 3 total students, including this one this year, as far as not earning the competency determination through MCAS. So again, really trying to stick close, using those listed courses to make it as light of a touch as possible in our policy right now. What that would look like is we then sort of alter all our documents based on what was in the school committee policy. So just rather than having it, the competency determination standard established by, and what it had now is the Massachusetts DESC and MCAS, we would just strike that and say the Norton Public Schools in our handbook, go back to our program of studies, do the same. We would still acknowledge, obviously, needing to take the MCAS. That's an important thing. Not necessarily listing it as a graduation requirement, and that's something definitely we could consider maybe in the future when we're looking at this. Do we want to require students to sit for an MCAS examination as part of it, since it will still be part of federal and state accountability? Students will still use our scores in order to assess our district, and it's important that we get good data from that as well. It helps us obviously looking at our instruction and curriculum. And then obviously in the future, looking at what the state has to say. And one other thing I'd say is definitely as we get that state guidance, it would be worth looking at our graduation requirements and thinking about ways that students could demonstrate mastery. Again, what we have listed, at least in this recommendation, really is just core courses, but maybe there's something else we want to think about requiring as far as competency portfolios or projects or things like that that might be part of that down the road. But again, I think it's wise to wait and see what the state would say with that, especially when they're going to be talking with lots of business and other leaders around the community, what they might want to see as kind of a systematic graduation requirement statewide. So that's pretty much it. Is really just kind of striking it and moving forward.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I guess one question, and you might have touched on this, do we anticipate with further meetings on this that they're going to have like more specific policy language to be put out to schools? And like right now I understand we need to change it just to because the law is passed, but I assume whatever version 2.0 looks like, there's going to be more guidance and literature passed around on that.
Yeah, so that was one of the things in the memo that I linked, is that just as part of the State of the Commonwealth address, Governor Healy had formed a commission through executive order to bring together business leaders, secondary, post-secondary educational leaders throughout the state, and try to come up with exactly that, like a recommendation for things that would be consistent across districts in the state, rather than kind of turning it loose to all total local control. What that would look like, and sort of what the kind of force behind that would be, who knows, down the future, but that is definitely the plan.
And there's also already a lot of pushback on that because of the language that went along with question 2 on the November ballot and giving more local control to schools and districts. Whether that's the right way to approach it or not remains to be seen, but there are definitely 2 approaches that are taking place right now across the state.
Well, and I've also seen some schools who are making it a graduation requirement that the students still have to pass the test.
Yeah, that is one of the frequently asked questions on their guidance there, is can you still make that? And you can, if you want to make that the local decision, that you still have to achieve, a meets or exceeds on the MCAS in order to graduate. You can do that too.
I think just from my standpoint, I think this is a great opportunity for our district to kind of separate themselves to a certain degree. And what I mean by that is you finally took some power back from the state, if you will. I feel like this is a time to capitalize on it and figure out what do we want our students of North to graduate and what is that requirement, So I think, I agree with the basic for now because there's a whole lot of, nonsense going on behind the scenes, if you will. But I think moving forward, I would really like to see, further things, financial, competencies, stuff along the lines of, actually real life, real world things that we can actually now incorporate into the curriculum, if you will, and make it a requirement, So I do feel like there, with everything that happened, there is some opportunity here for us to kind of grab this and be a leader, and not really worry about what other districts are doing. It's our choice now. So I would like to kind of see us, figure out exactly what that looks like.
So this is a first reading. We will bring this back to you at the March 12th meeting for a second reading to get us through the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, our lovely topic, you sick of talking about this yet? Is our MBTA zoning update with Paul Giuseppe.
Well, thank you. As Pam is getting everything set up online, because we actually have another presenter here with me, I'll just go and start again. I'm Paul DiGiuseppe, I'm the town planner, and I'm really excited to be in front of you all, and we're going to present where we are in the process with the MBTA. As you may recall, back in November, we had a proposal that was tabled at town meeting, and since that point, we've been working a lot with the public, and the planning board has been working to address issues that were brought up during that process, and I want to show that to you, especially some of the comments that were made that we presented to you all back in the fall about your issue of making sure we don't put this district in one area where it impacts one school. So the board's been very focused on that. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over to Will, who's with an organization called CHAPA. And Will's going to talk about the housing situation in Massachusetts and in Norton. He'll also talk about impacts of housing on school enrollment and revenues and taxes, property taxes and so forth. Then he'll turn it back to me and I'll go over where we are in the process right now and what the drafts are looking like and then the time frames before this goes to town meeting. So I just need to make sure oh, there we go. So Will, are you there? Hold on, Will, we're not quite hearing you. Try again.
So I can hear Will fine on the Zoom. Yeah. But I think you need to take the microphone down to either the, or turn him on for us next.
What if we mute, let's mute these 5 or these 7?
Because I can hear him, he's completely.
Yeah, because it's going through.
All right.
Yeah, but now you got feedback. That's.
All right, so we're going.
Will, can you say something?
I'm still here. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm getting some echoes from your end, but as long as you can hear me, then I think we're all set to go. Am I all set to start speaking?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks all for having me. Really glad to be here and would love to be there in person, and hopefully I will be able to come to future meetings in Norton about this issue. But to introduce myself, my name is Will Radigan. I work for an organization called the Citizens Housing and Planning Association. We're a statewide nonprofit that works to encourage housing that's affordable to people with low and moderate incomes. And I've been working for about almost the last year with communities around the state to educate them about what this new law, the MBTA Communities Act, means and how it is going to affect our communities. So I guess I'm not sharing the screen, so Paul, could you do some slides for me? Okay, thanks very much. So what is the MBTA Communities Act? It was passed in 2020 as part of an economic development bill, signed into law by Charlie Baker after passing nearly unanimously through the state legislature. And what it does is it requires 177 communities, so really most of eastern Massachusetts, to create an area somewhere in the community where some multifamily housing would be allowed to be built. It doesn't mean it has to be built, but it would give property owners the option to build it. And unlike other zoning reforms that have happened in other states, this law allows communities to choose where they would like to see that new housing be built based on their unique situations in the community. And most importantly, what it does is it reduces a lot of the red tape that has made it very hard to build housing in Massachusetts. So we can move on. So first off, I think it's important to start with the why this law was passed in order to understand what kind of impact it's likely to have and what considerations you might make as you're implementing it. So very simply, this is about housing affordability. It's about making housing more affordable, not kind of capital A affordable housing, but housing that's affordable for everyone. Because the fact is, we're seeing really high home prices in Massachusetts push out college graduates, young adults and families trying to buy their first homes or find an affordable rental, and older adults who may have lived in our communities for decades and now are having a difficult time downsizing to a smaller place. We're also seeing teachers, firefighters, police officers, and public servants struggling to find homes in the communities that they serve. And this is a long-term problem that has really grown across the state. There's not a specific community that's responsible for it, and there's not a specific community that can solve it. So the state stepped in to try to take a regional approach to creating housing across the entire region. We can move on. And a little bit about the why. Very simply, housing prices have skyrocketed since 2016. Massachusetts has seen housing prices increase by 73%, and Norton has increased by 73% as well. So right in line with the state. A little cheaper than the state as a whole, but that kind of increase in just a short period can really drive a lot of people into a difficult situation, which I'll cover on the next slide. So how difficult is that situation? It's gotten pretty rough, and I pulled some data for Norden in particular, so you can see how it's affecting you. And the way we think about housing affordability is if you're spending more than 30% of your before-tax income on housing, we consider you cost-burdened, and if you're spending more than 50%, you're extremely cost-burdened. And that means that you're struggling to pay for housing alongside groceries, healthcare, education for your children, all the other things that you need to live a good life. And what we're seeing is that about 25% of homeowners in Norden are struggling to stay in their homes, and that's not quite so high because many people bought, of course, when housing prices were much cheaper. But for renters who are really facing the housing market as it is right now, almost 50% of renters in Norden are struggling to stay in their homes, which is a big problem. Those people, they may think about moving, they may think about what are the sacrifices they need to make in order to stay in their homes. It's really a tough situation. So we can look at some more of those impacts in the next slide. So I wanted to think about what would be relevant to you in thinking about this issue, and I thought it'd be good to look at what Norden teachers can afford based on current housing prices. And I don't mean this as any criticism of the salary scale, because this is a problem that every single school district in the state is facing, which is that teachers are not able to afford to live in the districts that they're serving. So I just took a look at the contract. Starting salary is $48,000 a month. Based on that 30% a month affordability ratio, that means you can afford to pay about $1,200 a month as a starting teacher in Norden. Median rent in Norden is $2,600, so you're not even close to affording rent. And median home price at $550,000. If you're putting 20% down at current interest rates, that's a monthly payment of $3,200 a month just for the median priced home. So, as a starting teacher, no way you're affording an apartment, no way you're affording to buy a house. Maybe with a partner you can pull off rent. Maybe with a lot of roommates you can pull off a house, but it's a really tough situation. And what it's doing is driving a lot of people out of the state. And we can look at that more in the next slide. So this is the reason why this was included in an economic development bill, because our housing affordability is becoming a major economic problem for Massachusetts. In 2023, Massachusetts lost more residents than it gained. And what's really important to see about that is who's leaving. And if you look at the graph on the right, we'll see that although we have some college students still moving to the state, we're seeing folks over 65 or between 45 to 64 leave at kind of moderate rates, but we're seeing folks from 25 to 44 leave Massachusetts at a really rapid rate. And we know why that's happening. The Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce did a survey of people in the age group. They found that 1 in 4 young people plan to leave Greater Boston in the next 5 years, and 2 of the top 3 reasons for leaving are related to housing affordability. That's the cost of rent and the ability to buy a home. So we're seeing young people leave the state specifically because of housing, and those are people that are at the age where they're starting families, buying their first home, launching businesses. Many of them might be starting work as a teacher, and they're growing their careers. And if we want to build a thriving economy for the state, we can't be having people leave the state just when they're ready to begin contributing to our economy and our society, especially because we're a state that invests so much in our schools and universities, and then we're investing all of that time and money, and then people are taking those skills to other states instead of investing them here at home. We can move on to the next slide. So the question, of course, is why is housing in Massachusetts so expensive? And the answer is really simple. Supply is less than demand. There's a lot more people that want to live here than we have homes for them to live. And the reason for that is also very simple. We just have not been building very much housing in the state for a long time. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were building 25 to 30,000 homes per year. And then what happened between the 80s and 90s was that towns around the state decided they were going to go through a process called downzoning, where they made it much more difficult to build multifamily homes like 2 families, triple deckers, apartments, etc. And so what we saw in the 90s is we were still building a lot of single family homes, which tend to be more expensive, but we almost stopped building multifamily housing, which tends to be cheaper entirely. Same thing in the 2000s. 2010s got a little better, but still building very few homes overall. And what we're seeing now is that those 3 decades of building very little are really coming back to bite us in the form of very high prices. We go on to the next slide. But of course, why did we stop building housing? The answer, again, is pretty simple. CHAPA works as a convener across the housing industry. We've talked to developers, municipalities, realtors, advocates, and more to ask why it's so hard to build housing. And the answer was overwhelming. It was zoning was the biggest barrier. So you probably all have heard about zoning a bit if you're engaged in municipal politics and policy making, but I think it's worth going to a little bit about what zoning means, and then how this law is seeking to change zoning to make it easier to buy affordable homes. So we can go to the next slide for that. So what is zoning? Zoning is the set of rules that determines what can be built in your community and where you can build it. So that can set things like the shape, the height, and size of buildings that's allowed, the distance between buildings and other land uses like agriculture or industrial sites, whether the land can be used for residential use, for commercial use, for open space, or for industrial, and also things like parking requirements or affordability requirements and standards on architectural design. I think the most important thing to remember about zoning is that the kind of zoning we're talking about for the MBTA Communities Act does not force property owners to do anything or to make any changes to their property. What it does do is give property owners more options on what they can use their property for. And we can go into that more next slide. So how is the MBTA Communities Act informing zoning? It allows communities to create districts we call overlay districts, where property owners will be given the option to build multifamily housing at around 15 homes per acre. And I'll go over what that looks like in a minute. So again, it's saying to property owners, you already own this land, but now you have the option to build multifamily housing if you choose to do so. You certainly don't have to. You can keep your property exactly how it is, but it's giving you more options. And if you choose to build in that home, even if the zoning allows, say, up to 8 units on your property, you can build 1 unit, 2 unit, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 8. As long as it's under that maximum, you're allowed to build it. So it's really giving owners a lot more flexibility with what they can do with their land. And the idea is that over time, as some owners decide to either redevelop or sell to someone else, we'll start to see more units in the community, but you're not going to see a whole bunch all at once, as long as you follow the plan that Paul's working on, which is seeking to provide gradual redevelopment opportunities in the town. We can move on. So we're talking about multifamily housing, but what do we actually mean there? This law is really intending to create what we call missing middle housing by encouraging housing at around 15 units per acre. And missing middle housing is called that because it's, one, missing much of it, and it's in the middle, both in terms of what's affordable and its size. So it's really everything between single-family houses, which we have a lot of right now, and we know are very expensive, median home price over $550,000, and these mid-rise apartment buildings, which we have a lot more of in urban areas. And on the other hand, it's also between single-family homes that are expensive and subsidized units, which many people in the middle class do not qualify for. They don't have low enough incomes, but they're also not able to afford really expensive market housing. So it's really seeking to create modest-sized housing for people in the middle class. If we go on, we can see what that actually looks like. So I think people often have like these kind of unrealistic portraits of what 15 units per acre or missing middle housing looks like. I think it's always helpful to look at what examples of it already exist in your community. I just pulled two here. 140 Barrow Street, we have a 3-family house that's on a fifth of an acre. That comes up to 14 units per acre, so that would qualify for the kind of housing we're trying to create here. And then 278 Reservoir Street, we have 4 units on a quarter acre, comes right up to 50 units per acre. So these are kind of exactly the kind of project that this initiative is shooting for. You might see larger projects with more apartments, but they would be at about this kind of density. That's really the goal of this law. So it's not talking about giant apartment buildings, it's talking about going up from single family homes to something that's a little larger scale but might be providing 3 units in a building that looks somewhat similar or is of similar scale to a single family home. Moving on. So this is the school committee. I imagine your first question is how this will affect school enrollment. And I think this is an area where it's really important to look at what the data has actually shown so far, because I think when we hear new housing, we think a lot of new school children. And what's really interesting about this is that the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is the planning council for the entire Greater Boston region, has studied this pretty extensively, and they've actually found that there's really very little relationship between new housing development and specifically multifamily housing development and school enrollment. And if you look at the graph here, you can see about, I think we have 30 to 50 communities in the Metro Boston area, and on one axis we have their change in school enrollment, and the other axis we have their change in total housing units. And there's actually very little correlation between the change in total housing units and the change in school enrollment. And the reason for that is when we build multifamily housing, it tends to appeal much more to young couples, single people looking for their own apartments, older adults looking to downsize, and smaller families. School enrollment ends up being driven much more in the turnover of single-family homes, which are more likely to have families with children. So the upshot is Norden is not particularly likely to see much enrollment change, definitely in the short term, from this law. So moving to the next slide. And I just want to note, because I think the fear so many people have about new development is that it's going to overcrowd the schools. And we can find enrollment data, of course, on every school district in the state. And Norden, as you probably all know already, has declining enrollment. This isn't really likely to add many more, so if you're worried about kind of reversing that trend, this probably isn't going to be the silver bullet. It's going to start school enrollments increasing or leveling off, but it's certainly not going to overcrowd the schools. I would not be concerned about that. Unless you committed to some much more pro-growth housing plan than what Paul is proposing right now. So we can move on. Other common concerns I hear with this law is that it could somehow overload sewer and water capacity of Norden. And the thing that you should know there is that municipalities have absolutely no obligation to provide or pay for sewer and water for new developments. That is going to be at the expense of the developers. I know Norden has areas that do not have public sewer and water, and although that can make development harder, it is still possible. Developers are capable of building multifamily on land without public sewer and water, but you should know the town is not obliged to pay for that, so you don't have to worry about any large costs coming from those developments. Moving to the next slide. And finally, property taxes. I think this is kind of the first question people have about any change to municipal policy. And we had a great presentation on this actually this afternoon by the president of the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation that Paul was at as well, which I'm hoping at a later date we might actually be able to show that to you or other groups in Norden, because I thought it was really informative. But the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation studied how communities that have seen rapid housing growth and communities that have seen very little housing growth in the last 10 years have seen their property tax rates and total levies change. And the upshot on that, and I'd be happy to provide more data on this because I know folks might be interested, is that towns with the highest population growth have seen taxes as a percentage of income remain steady or decrease, whereas towns with population loss have seen the highest increases in property tax rates. And particularly relevant for the school committee, towns with the highest population growth have seen state aid as a percentage of their school funding increase. And so if you're thinking of ways to lessen the strain of school budget, which we know is an issue in almost every town in the state, it's actually communities that are seeing enrollment grow that are having less of an issue with that right now. And now, of course, as I said earlier, we're not likely to see a lot of population growth or enrollment growth from this law, but it's something to keep in mind if you get questions from us about how school enrollment changes could affect municipal finances. So moving on. And that's the end of my portion, and then I want to turn back to Paul, who's going to talk about exactly what his team is proposing right now to allow family housing in Norden. And I figure once we're both done, I'm happy to take some questions from the community or the general public, whatever.
Okay, so I just have a few slides. Better? Okay, so I just have a few slides here, but I want to spend my time talking about specifically things we're working on with the Norton MBTA communities. So Norton has been designated as an MBTA adjacent community because we're adjacent to Mansfield and Attleboro, which have commuter rail stops. So we have to designate a minimum of 50 acres at 15 units an acre. I think this is the part of the bylaw I really don't like, because in all my years of planning, I've learned, and we're seeing it here, you never lead with density and unit counts, because that's what people have been focusing on. And I want people to remember what Will was showing. That's what we're really striving for, places for that. And you know, I've heard some of the comments earlier today, at the beginning of the meeting today. What's driving this to are the real stories of people like that teacher, and then, you know, we have people, particularly there's a couple, you know, that I know here in town, young couple engaged, cannot find housing, living with their parents, because you saw the numbers that Will had, and that's a real world experience that this law is going to touch it a bit, but there are broader things that would have to happen. But anyway, so these are the minimums we have to get to: 15 units per acre, and at 50. Thank you, sir. Still want to put germs on it. And at minimum 50 acres. So it also, there were requirements that the law, we can't put age restrictions on there, so in the bylaw can't say it's limited to 55 and older, and we can't say that it's 1 or 2 bedrooms. We need to make sure we make provisions for families with children. And as Will said, it doesn't require any multifamily to be built, nor infrastructure investments. You may recall when we were bringing this through in the fall that the town of Milton had a lawsuit going with the state. Well, the Supreme Judicial Court did weigh in on that, and they ruled in favor of the state. They said the MBTA Communities Act is constitutional and it's enforceable, so the Attorney General can enforce it. It did also say, the court did also say that the state didn't properly promulgate their bylaws or their guidelines, but they fixed that. They passed emergency regulations, and they're seeking to make those regulations fully permanent, and we've received direct emails from the state saying it's enforceable and the regulations are regulations. So before we start going into the areas that the town is currently looking at, I just want to make a couple of points here. One, again, was the planning board heard your concerns about putting this in one area. So we're looking at about 4 areas, and one of the criteria they're going to be looking at is, do the areas split the difference between Nurse Elementary and Solomon East? So that was a big thing. And also, we heard at town meeting from folks that they didn't want large vacant areas, and you'll see that we've picked areas that are not that. So the first one is Norton Glen. We actually had an event shortly after town meeting when the public said they wanted to have a public event where people could come in. Well, we had one right here, and we asked people to vote where would they like to see this district go. The #1 vote getter was Norton Glen. You know, there's good opportunities for redevelopment here. Now, this is 150 units. It's all affordable housing, but it's getting pretty old. I hate to say it's old because it was built after I was born. But there are opportunities, if this were to be designated for MBTA community zoning, that if they needed to expand, they could. Because right now, they actually legally can't. They're no longer a legal conforming use. But if this were designated, then if they wanted to redevelop it, they could. But this area is built out. As you can see, there's no vacant land in what we're selecting. The lots aren't that big, they're all about 1 acre. There's wetlands there. Still would need to meet your wetland requirements. These lots are pretty oddly shaped, so that's going to reduce what they can do. There's sewer here, and there's some nearby commercial, so this could be a good area. But this was the #1 vote getter.
The number 2, and of course these students go to Nurse Elementary. The number 2 vote getter was Mansfield Ave, which you recall was where we had the property over at TPC during the fall meeting. But this was the number 2 vote getter, but instead of putting that parcel in, it is not in. I want to repeat, that parcel, vacant parcel, is not in. All of the parcels that you can see on the map, this is, again, a largely built-out area. It's a mixture of residential, including quads, and multifamily, including the 40B that's about to open called Norton Links. There's a mixture of warehouse and some commercial in this area. This area is served by sewer. There's retail nearby. It's got proximity to I-495. So this is another area, and these students go to Solomons, as you know. Another area that...
Paul, just a quick question on that one.
Yes.
That is across the road from TPC, correct?
Across the road.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. We are not going to TPC.
Thank you.
Okay. There's still confusion out there about that. But the next property that's being considered, and this was the number 4 vote getter at our event, was the at 138 Barrow Street. In fact, this is very close to that slide of one of the homes that Will showed. But this is the old Tweeve Mill. And this has been a vacant mill for at least 2 or 3 years. And people thought that this could be a good adaptive reuse of this site. There is a lot of vacant land there, and unlike the other 2 areas I just showed, this is one big parcel. So it would have, you know, it's a different situation than the others, but it could be a great site for development. This is on septic, there's no sewer in the area, but again, there's about a 60,000 square foot building there that could be repurposed. And then finally, and then these students, or students in this area go to Solomons. And then finally, this was brought up at one of our recent public hearings, Red Mill Village in 274 East Main, which again is largely built out and a fairly new development. This was brought up by folks who, you know, said we want to put it there because of the condition. It's pretty darn new and it's in great condition, that they felt that nothing would happen here. So this is that option. That's why this is here. This is all up for consideration. Students here would go to Nurse, or they do go to Nurse Elementary School. Again, good site. It's already multifamily. There's commercial nearby. There's commercial right within this area as well. And then, in addition to, you know, just putting it on a map, we have to come up with text. And, you know, this is the nuts and bolts of all of this. But as Will said, this is an overlay district, so any of the properties that get selected could build under their base zoning, or they could opt into this, depending on what they want to do. But in most of these cases, it would give them a right that they don't currently have. It would make multifamily by right, so meaning no special permits needed. We would be doing it by site plan. So the planning board would still review it, but it would just be by site plan. Now, a development could also be, in addition to just being all multifamily, we're looking at it just also allowing for top-of-the-shop housing, which allows commercial on the first floor and residential above it. The board was wanting to try to promote more commercial development in town and thought this would be a really good tool to do. And then one of the things we're still working on, we're working on all of this still, is these dimensional requirements that Will showed earlier. The thing I want to point out about this is, if we're trying to get to that smaller type of missing middle housing, these things are important. Smaller lot sizes will help guarantee smaller buildings. Having it on areas that already have smaller lot sizes helps us get there too. Height requirements are a big thing. We certainly heard loud and clear from the public at town meeting that density bonuses were not wanted. So those will probably be coming out. We're working on that. Things like setbacks and frontage all affect how a building could be built. And so, you know, if we want to achieve that smaller type of missing middle housing, you know, we have to try to set it up so that these types of standards help promote it, and try not to promote the large-scale apartments that, you know, a lot of people in town do not want to see. And finally, our time frame. We are still in the process, the planning board is in the process of refinement of the text and going through the parcel selection. But March 25th, the board is actually having their public hearing. The notices will be going out in the mail next week, I think. Signs are in the ground next week, but then we will be having that public hearing on March 25th. And it's looking like April 1st will be a joint meeting with Planning Board, Finance Committee, and Select Board. I understand tomorrow the Select Board is voting to see if they can make that meeting. I understand Finance Committee voted the other night that they could. So April 1st will probably be that. That's a crucial meeting. Our goal is to get the boards talking together and have an understanding and have my hope is have a unified set of recommendations going to town meeting. And then May 19th is where it all happens, town meeting. So that concludes my presentation.
So I have a number of questions and concerns, but the two that are kind of sticking out right now, one, with these new development overlays, is there a way for developers and builders to, as we've heard for many years, kind of skirt the building process and make these like those 40B units, or is this going to be specifically mentioned otherwise? Because I don't know what Norton's percentage is. I know we've fought that 40B battle for several years that I've been in town. So I don't know what the latest percentage is, but is that a possibility for these zoning?
So we're over 10%, barely. We're 10.02. Now, those are new numbers. So 40Bs are always an option. In fact, there's one going through right now that the Select Board, they did a friendly 40B, and that's coming to the ZBA very soon. In fact, I'm meeting with them tomorrow to talk about when they're submitting it. We want to keep in mind though, 40B is a different thing than this. 40Bs require affordable housing. This does not necessarily.
So the second question and comment as well is, I think my personal biggest issue with this is they talk about this as housing, but it's still really rental properties. So when you're talking a multifamily unit, are they marketing it as like a townhouse where you own your unit, or do you have a landlord and 4 tenants? Like, that's the part I can never understand with this whole law.
So that's at the choice of the owner. The bylaw, the state law does not mandate rental or ownership. So it'll just be dependent on a project that comes in. So it's a case-by-case basis. But that's not something the town can regulate. We can't regulate ownership or rental or demand it.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
And this law doesn't change that.
I guess my question is I think it's the town of Middleborough has come up with something around unfunded mandates that we know a lot about. But from a state level, in challenging this, a Prop 2.5 from an unfunded mandate standpoint, with the state saying you got to do this, but we're not giving you any money to do it. What does that look like at the current moment?
So I'm going to start that, and Will, do you want to chime in on the whole unfunded mandate? So the Division of Local Mandates last week had a determination, Middleborough, and there were 2 other towns that sought that same request. Was this an unfunded mandate? So that division did find that this is an unfunded mandate, although it left a lot of things open. Our town council is still looking into this. I can't tell you, the Attorney General issued a letter, a press release the other day that says they don't agree with that finding and that the towns are still needing to comply with it. That's a tough, that issue of unfunded mandates is a challenging one because, for example, our town did receive funding for consultants to help us in the first go-around. We don't have to provide water or sewer for any project. The other thing is, if a project does get built, there are tax revenues that come in. So I think more has to develop on this to determine what exactly do they mean by unfunded mandate. And Will, I don't know if you want to add anything or correct me.
Hold on one second.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
You don't hear me?
Okay, you're good.
Yeah, what the auditor has said is that the law, as it was originally written, did not provide funding for towns to drop these zoning plans. That said, after the fact, the administration did provide a lot of funding for towns to drop these plans. So there's been a fair amount of funding available to Norton. There's actually still more on the table that you are able to apply for from the state to explore some of these different options that Paul presented. So, of course, we don't know exactly what will happen. The process is that towns that have an issue with this and do not wish to come in compliance can go to court again. The state has been pretty outspoken that they will defend the law in court, and so I wouldn't think those lawsuits have a whole lot of chance of success, but of course I can't say for sure. But the state's position is that this is not going to change much, and that would be my prediction, is that if anything, this might be a delay for some towns, but likely the law will move forward as it has been already.
And Will, I think check.
Just ask your question.
Better? So I guess, all right, so I guess my question is, you know, you have a study around how this could affect student enrollment. You know, what is the percentage based within the state itself of students per housing units? There's got to be some percentage of, you know, 0.3, 0.29, whatever it may be. Because wouldn't that be a pretty good judge of what we were looking at if we put 750 units on and went with a state average, where we always generally fall in Norton? You know, if that number is 0.29, that's, you know, over 200 students that could be coming into district.
Sorry. Hold on.
One person per minute is hard. I don't have the number across the top of my head. What I can tell you is that based on the projects that have gone through under this law so far, is that we see students per unit for multifamily housing that are much, like even radically lower than what we see for single family homes. And what that study showed us is that new housing has very little impact on school enrollment, whereas turnover in existing single family homes that tend to have more bedrooms does have more of an impact. So to give some examples, we just discussed this morning, project in Southborough with 300 units, 12 students enrolled in the schools from that project. Right? And now that's, of course, not generalizable. Every project will be different. I think smaller multifamily will probably have more students than the kind of projects with a lot of studio apartments, of course. But that's a great question. I think we should get that data point. We don't have it right now, but all the data shows us that new multifamily housing is unlikely to really change your student enrollment very much.
And then my last question. My last question would be, it says towns with the highest population growth have seen taxes as percentage of income remain steady or decrease. What towns have decreased taxes? Because I would like to go there.
That's a great question. So I'm going to try to send you this presentation through Paul after this, because I think it would be a great thing to share. But so towns have seen taxes decrease as a percentage of income, right? Which means you're seeing probably rising incomes and taxes that are increasing slower than those incomes. I don't think we have any towns where taxes as a whole are decreasing. What we do know is that towns that are seeing increasing population are able to spread municipal services across a wider base of taxpayers, which leads people to have to pay fewer taxes as a percentage of their incomes. And we do actually have this study that compares the 28 towns that CHAPA is working with right now in terms of how their taxes have changed. And I'm going to try to get to that to Paul as soon as we have all the data.
Would love to see it. Anything else? Great, Paul, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.
Thank you as well. Thank you very much.
Check. All right, next up is the second reading and vote on the concussion policy revision.
Okay, so at our last meeting, Mrs. Doreen Brown came out and presented to the committee on our updated head injury and concussion policy. This was done in partnership with the District Wellness Committee and takes two current policies and kind of brings them into one that's a little bit easier in terms of implementation and ease of use for both families and for our staff as well. So because it's a second reading, it will require a vote this evening.
Questions, comments, concerns?
None.
All right then, so I would request a motion to approve the head injury and concussion policy as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's a 5-0 vote. Thank you for the committee's work on that. I know it is a lot when you start going through all that information for sure. Next up is second reading and vote on the meal charge policy. However, Dr. O'Neill.
So earlier this week, we actually had the Department of Education out for their in-person administrative audit of our food service program. And during that visit, they gave us some feedback on what we voted on 2 weeks ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Hatfield, and we are going to turn this into a new first reading, which means that Christine will go over the changes with you, and then we will bring it back at the March 12th meeting for a second reading. So, Mrs. Hatfield?
So I apologize that we will do this 3 times now total, but so the first, basically why we have to update this is because now that Norton this year, qualified as a CEP district, we are also universally free, but federally we're a CEP district, which is Community Eligibility Provision. And so that means federally we are free regardless. Just to give you a quick history why this is all changing is the threshold used to be 40% for identifiable student population, and it got reduced federally to 25%. So most of our schools fall into that category, so they lumped that together. So that is now why we're a CEP district. So she said that we, the auditor recommended that we no longer need some of this language. So we just figured we would clean it up. That is the bullet, and the very first one is the bullet in red for the reduced price meals, because everybody is free regardless. We're going to get rid of that, eliminate that bullet. And then on the next page, there was no need for the differentiation of the 4 students with free and reduced, just different categories that we broke out. We no longer needed that. And I'm sorry, I'm just pointing this out because I didn't highlight it before, so I apologize, because I did it before I printed this out. On the payment and low balances, the new language, we are getting rid of the very last paragraph where it says any remaining positive balances for a particular student will be carried over the next school year. We're getting rid of or negative. I did not put that in red, but I just want to point that out. So now it's just, we can't carry over the negative balances, only the positive. And then lastly, the graduation requirements of the seniors may lose the ability to participate, even though we didn't follow that directly. It was more of teeth leverage, perhaps. But we shouldn't have had that in there. Either you can use it to not allow a student to participate in a fee-based program, but not something like capital. So we eliminated that as well. And then just because the first 2 bullets on the financial assistance,
we didn't need those either. We just took the bullet of the unlimited fresh fruits and moved that up to under the universal free meals.
So I guess my question and concern for you, Dr. O'Neill, because this was a votable agenda item, in theory, we would have to vote in the negative on this presented item.
Or we can table the vote, because excuse me, it says second reading and vote, so we can table the vote portion, and we'll come back to it on the 12th. Correct.
The 12th be the second reading.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be my recommendation. Let's table this, look at it, and then we can make a final vote next meeting, because I think there's a little,
So I'll make
it's
a
not
motion.
our admin fault by any means, because obviously this came back through yesterday, but I think just getting everything on one paper, making sure everything's correctly crossed off and everything else, so we can actually just see it all at once would definitely be helpful.
So I would make a motion to table the vote on the second reading for the change policy revision.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Audrey. Sherry let us down.
I was letting somebody else have it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you very much. And next up, and last, is other business that was not anticipated in 48 hours.
I have 2 items for the committee. The first is some updated financials that were received earlier this afternoon from the town manager. There are updated operating revenues and expenditures from town hall. And Christine also has updated budget financials for you all as well. We have been doing some work over these last few days. We've had a few retirements and resignations come in, and therefore have been able to take our initial level service budget that we had proposed to you a few weeks ago, and we have it down to a 4.96 increase, which, to be honest, I'm pretty excited about. This is definitely one of the lowest increases for level services that we've seen in a number of years. It's important, I think, for the committee to know that any of the positions that were reinstated after fall town meeting with that free cash are still in this version of the budget with 4.96. So we have our next meeting, which will be on Saturday, March 8th, which will be our budget workshop. We will go into more detail for the committee at that time. That will also be when we present ideas and alternatives to, if we are not able to get a level service budget from the town, our thoughts and processes around how we would close that gap. So that is one thing.
Dr. O'Neill, real
Yes.
quick. That is an open public meeting for anybody that wants to come to that March 8th.
Yes, it is.
And that is at the Yale School?
We will be in the Yale Library.
What time?
I believe we said 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Because I think we decided 8 was too early and 10 was too late, if I remember correctly. Does that sound right? Oh, it says 9. Okay. You may not have, maybe you weren't there that night, yeah. I believe, so it is 9 a.m. And then the only other item I have for you all is a reminder that next Wednesday evening, March 5th, will be our annual STEAM night at Norton High School. Super excited about this event. Mrs. Carrie Murphy from Norton High School is I can't think of words. I want to use the word steamroller, but that's not accurate at all.
I like that.
She's the coordinator, proponent. She is the cheerleader. I don't know what's wrong with my brain right now. She is in charge of this event, and it's an amazing event. We actually have 30 tables of different STEAM-related activities and vendors for families to come. It is for the whole family, so bring your children. There's lots of hands-on activities, and we hope to see people there.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, time and date one more time?
March 5th from 6 to 7:30 at Norton High School.
Awesome. Anybody else with other business? I also have 2 things. One, I don't know if you've been paying attention to Norton. The town manager is retiring as of June 30th. The select board, per the town charter, is going to be asking us to put a member up of our choice to sit on the selection committee for the new town manager. By town charter rules, it does not have to be one of us. We just have to come to agreement on who it could be or wants to be. So I think if we just kind of keep that rolling, I know they're obviously want to get started on it decently quick. I think they have it on their agenda for tomorrow to actually announce exactly what that's going to look like. And then, what was my number two? Oh, number two, the carnival. The Veterans Committee reached out to me today about adding that onto the next agenda, so just kind of have that in mind as well. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Second.
Oh, second. Sorry. Second by Sherry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Mine's too far.